So today we're going to be ranking all of the last 20 MVPs, starting off with the 2004-2005 Steve Nash, all the way up to what we currently have got in Nikola Jokic winning his third in 4 years yesterday. But before we get on, if you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. But anyway, now let's get on to the video. So we're going to be ranking every single one of these on a tier list. So we're going to start off with GOAT tier. Then we're going to have historic, which is obviously like not quite some of the greatest seasons of all time. Then we've got great, we've got good, and then we have got forgettable, which are like MVP years where either the player probably, in hindsight, didn't deserve to win. You could argue even at the time didn't deserve to win. Or MVPs that we just kind of forgot what they have done. So we're going to start off with the 04-05 Steve Nash. And surprisingly, good. Steve Nash's first MVP is going into good. The reason why is because I think if the Steve Nash situation happens again, he wins the MVP. I think if that happens in today's NBA, he wins the MVP almost every time. A pass-first point guard is never going to have the stats that pop out. It's never going to have the stats that like absolutely like wow you. But when one addition to a team and turn them from like a 20-win team to a 60-win team, he's probably going to win the MVP. And he just had like, if we remember Chris Paul back in 2022 or 2021, imagine that just at a much bigger scale. He was doing it at a higher rate. And while Steve Nash wasn't scoring the most, his efficiency in shooting, what he did to that team, I still think in hindsight, Steve Nash deserved to win that MVP. Shaq was second, I think, in 05, and I think Nash deserved to win that first one. The second one, they won a lot more games, and that has to go into whatever the bottom tier is. 06 Steve Nash has got to go into that tier. I want to put it higher, but I actually think Nash was better than next year. I think the Dirk year, Nash was better. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to give. While like Amare was out, I do think in hindsight you probably don't give it to Steve Nash again. While Kobe, I'm not sure, won enough. I do think LeBron or Dirk probably did deserve it that year. Like, the reason I think he won it in 04-05, and I think it's justified, is because of the huge jump, but the team got worse in 05-06. I know Amare was gone. He played better himself, but he still didn't put up these absolutely crazy numbers. Still not like an out of robbery as bad as people think, but still, I'm going to put in forgettable. Dirk is probably literally the most forgotten guy that won an MVP. I'll still put him in good, though. The Mavs won, I think, 67 games that year. And it's not like he was playing with another All-Star. I'm not sure whether or not Josh Howard won an All-Star that year. And the fact that a lot of you guys watching this video probably have never heard of Josh Howard, who was the second best player on that Dallas Mavericks team. Yeah, they blew it in the playoffs. But this is a regular season award. If we're talking about the entirety of the season, you put him into whatever the lowest tier is because he stunk it up against the We Believe Warriors. And based on the regular season, I think this is also one of those like voter fatigue, he probably should have won it last year type awards. I think if had Nash still won 2 of 3, I think Nash maybe deserved the 07 one more than he deserved the 06 one, but at the same time, Dirk absolutely unbelievable that year. I don't think, like, unless you have the power of hindsight or you're judging on the playoffs, nobody argued that Dirk won it at the time. So I think Dirk winning is like a fairly obvious one. Kobe's MVP year. I hate having to do this, but it's got to be in these lower tiers. I don't think Kobe's 08, it wasn't his best season. I'm not sure it was his best season. I'm not sure he deserved it over Chris Paul. He got the team to the finals. It's Kobe's such a weird career where it's like, yes, if you look at his career, he deserved more than one MVP. But if you look at individual seasons, even at the time, it's hard to pinpoint where he deserved that extra MVP. Unless you want to discount Nash's MVP where he finished 4th, cool. But it's hard to, and I think actually with today's criteria, with the way they judge the MVP today, I actually do think he probably would have won it in 06. And the 06 one would go in here as well. Kobe had one of the best careers of all time. But as far as MVP seasons go, I gotta put that 08 one down here. Like, I don't think it was as good a season as Nash's first one or Dirk's MVP. But obviously Kobe, by far the better player. This is, it's hard. It's hard with some of these ones. Then we have got 09 LeBron. And, like, stats-wise, brilliant. Oh, it's in this same tier. It's in this same tier, and I might have to move one or two up. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what I do with this LeBron one. For either of the first two LeBrons. I'm going to put it in great. Oh, great. Do I just book? No, I'm going to stick with it. LeBron's year was incredible. Obviously, Dwayne Wade was thereabouts winning that MVP with him. But I do think that it really was LeBron's. Like, the Cavs were the one seed. Cavs won. Pretty sure they won 60 games that year. They were exceptional. And LeBron was arguably one of the 3 or 4 best defensive players in the world as well at that time. He was an exceptional offensive player. He was scoring efficiently. He was putting up near 30. And it was his athletic peak was around that time. And yeah, obviously he wasn't bad against the Magic, but they were disappointed to lose to the Magic in the playoffs that year. But still, I think we're going great. And then we're going 2010 LeBron James. And like, these were both just like good years for LeBron. Like, that's just what I'll say is, like, these were good years for LeBron. I think with, like, again, Cleveland going to win 60 games. With the supporting cast he had winning 60 games, they can't not being great. They can't not be. And I know people are going to be killing me for the Kobe situation. Yeah, Kobe, one of the greatest players of all time, but it was just that season. I'm not sure it was even his best season. But you've got, I think we're going to put the two LeBrons in here. And now this is where a lot of people, like, I would be inching towards, like, the Bulls weren't the greatest team in the world. He was the only All-Star, unless Deng might have made it that year. But they were winning 60 games. Like, it's in good. It's in good. But Derrick Rose is one of the most underrated MVPs of all time. That Derrick Rose MVP is one of the most underrated. Nobody was arguing at the time that LeBron deserved to win. We only argue that 15 years later. No one at the time argued it. Derrick Rose, in his third year, led the Bulls to 60-plus wins, who were so much better than the Big Three Heat. Everyone expected the Big Three Heat to dominate the Eastern Conference. The Bulls were so much better in the regular season. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest in the playoffs. Yeah, it was locked up by LeBron in the playoffs. Doesn't matter. Still, though, as far as MVP seasons go, it has to go into good. I wish I could put it higher, but I can't. 2012 LeBron. Like, Miami weren't the one seed. No, good. I'll say the weakest of LeBron's years in the regular season. Miami, again, weren't the one seed. It was Chicago. Derrick Rose was the one seed. His team wasn't the one seed. As good as he was, that Miami Heat team was built for the playoffs. Stat-wise, obviously, is going to be ridiculously good. But we're going to put LeBron's second or third MVP into good. And we've now got into GOAT tier. The first of our GOAT tier category is LeBron's 2012-2013 MVP. The Miami Heat won 27 games in a row. They won, like, what was that? Did they win 66 or something that year? LeBron was one vote off unanimous MVP because someone decided to vote for Carmelo Anthony. Like, it was like when Shaq almost won it and one dude voted for Iverson. One dude voted for Carmelo Anthony. It would be like, imagine if the one dude voted for Chet this year. But he was he was as good as being a unanimous MVP. He could have won. He was second defensive player of the year. He very easily could have won it. I'm not going to say Marc Gasol or he was robbed or anything because nobody's complains the year before. Like, there were 2 consecutive years where defensive player of the year made the all defensive second team. Just because they were only allowed one center on the all-defensive team, and a lot of the votes were split between 2 centers, that being Marc Gasol and Tyson Chandler. And the year before, I think Joakim Noah made the first team all-defense over Tyson Chandler, but Tyson Chandler won Defensive Player of the Year. It happened 2 years in a row, and Noah mentions it. But LeBron, and I think 2012-2013 is one of the greatest seasons of any player's ever had, especially with his playoff run as well. But as far as his MVP goes, that's going into GOAT tier. Kevin Durant 2014. Great. I think we've got to put it in great. But I think this is going to be one of the most slept on MVPs ever, because what Kevin Durant did that year was nothing short of unbelievable. Russell Westbrook was out for a lot of the year, and they were the best team in the NBA. Kevin Durant was putting up 35 on everybody on pretty decent efficiency, and nobody was able to stop this guy. He just went way clear early. And once Russ came back, the team surprisingly got worse. They were probably better with Reggie Jackson at the one stages in that year. But Kevin Durant right into great. I wish I could put it a little bit higher, but no, I'll keep it there. So then we've got Steph's first MVP. I think what Steph did was crazy. The Warriors were just that good a team. But I think we're going to put it as one of the weaker MVPs. I think it's probably in the 3 weakest ones, because the stats weren't really there. Yeah, his shooting was there. But Harden, probably Harden. You could argue deserved it. LeBron, I don't think was in that conversation. Durant was injured. A lot of the best players in the league that year didn't have their greatest seasons other than James Harden. There were a lot of injuries, but obviously Steph Curry, without question, deserved that MVP. But I don't know. I think I'm going to put it in one of the lower tiers. Steph Curry 2016, the greatest individual regular season of all time. Obviously, if he won the championship, might have been the greatest season of all time, but the greatest regular season of all time, in my opinion, and I don't think it is particularly close. I genuinely don't think it's close. I think it's very hard to argue that anyone had a better individual season ever, unless we look back at freaking 60s Wilt, what he was doing. What Steph did that year revolutionized the game of basketball. People that weren't fans of basketball were watching basketball to watch this guy. And while I didn't live through Michael Jordan, I would assume Steph had a similar enough impact worldwide to what Jordan was having for that year. There were debates about Steph and Jordan. There were all these debates about what team was better, the 15-16 Warriors or the 73-9 Bulls. I think that's a legitimate debate. When they added Kevin Durant, there was no debate. But yeah, Steph Curry's in GOAT tier. I think if LeBron's season wasn't so good, you could argue Steph belongs to be in a tier by himself. Both of these guys should have been unanimous MVPs, so they are in that tier. Then we've got 2017 Russ. It's got to go into historic because he did something that nobody thought was ever going to be possible. And not only that, the Thunder weren't that bad. The Thunder were surprisingly not that bad, and their team sucked. As good as Oladipo was the next season, he hadn't had a brilliant season in his career up to that point. Domantas Sabonis was a rookie. Steven Adams was just a rebounder. Andre Roberson couldn't shoot. It was a terribly constructed team around him. He just willed them to wins. Russ shot well that year. Yeah, he obviously was never going to do much in the playoffs or anything, but as far as regular seasons go, I think Russ putting it in historic is fair. And I also think putting James Harden in historic is fair. Yeah, people don't like James Harden, but what James Harden was doing in the late 2010s, it was unbelievable. The guy was putting up 35, 9, and 13 regularly. He was almost leading the league in assists while putting up 30-something a game. Did the rules in the NBA back then benefit him? Yes, but he took advantage of them. Rules have benefited a lot of people. The handshake benefited a lot of people. Guys who play defense and had big hands. The fact that there was no zone benefited Jordan. The fact that we have, there are certain rules nowadays that will benefit LeBron James. So you can't knock someone for benefiting by the rules. But James Harden, I think, without question, is in here in historic. That was a great year. 2019 Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm going to put 2019 Giannis in one of the lower tiers. I do think he did have a brilliant year. I think Harden and PG both also have brilliant years. But I do think that maybe I'm being kind of blinded by the playoffs. I think it was a fairly obvious win for Giannis for MVP. But I'm going to put it into the good tier. Again, these are MVPs. They're all great seasons. I'm going to put 2020 Giannis historic. There was a narrative coming up towards the start of the pandemic that LeBron was creeping back into it. But prior to the pandemic, the Milwaukee Bucks were on a near 70 win pace. Giannis won Defensive Player of the Year, and Giannis was way better than he was the year before. So I think there's no question about it. I think the third best season on this list is Giannis' 2020 season. Obviously, the season got pulled early, but with the way Giannis was playing up to that point, like, obviously the bubble doesn't count. The way Giannis was playing up to that point, it's got to go into the historic category. It was a stupidly good season for him. And had he finished out that year, he could have been in that top tier. Like, there's no way he would have dropped below this with how he played. Then we're going to go 2021 Jokic. The most, like, this is an MVP where everyone else was injured. Like, second in first place votes that year didn't make the playoffs. Steph didn't make the playoffs, and he was second in first place votes. Chris Paul was second in MVP voting that year. Like, Derrick Rose got a first place MVP vote that year in 2021, 10 years after his MVP. Like, no, 2021 Jokic is one of the worst MVP. This is the worst MVP on this list, is 2021 Jokic. Forget Steve Nash's 2015-16. 2021 Jokic is going down there. 2022 Jokic, however, is in the great tier. I don't care that he was the 6th seed. That's one of the best individual seasons I've ever seen from a player. Like, a ridiculously good season. Like, by every metric, his team was hurt. His team was barely playing. He willed them to the 6th seed. Joel Embiid, I don't care about the complaints. He probably deserved to win MVP last year. Put him in good. Put him in good tier. I don't really, I don't care. Put it in good tier. I'm not putting it in the forgettable tier. I'm just not putting Joel Embiid down here. He had too good a season last year. I might have to do it. Because I'm looking, I was like, I don't have space to put any more people in the good tier. Oh, I might have to do it. Well, who had the better season? Joel Embiid last year or Jokic this year? Now, that's the question. I'll put Embiid down. And I'm going to move Jokic into good this year. I think this year Jokic was all right. I think Luka and Shea both make good cases for being MVP. So I think that putting Jokic in good tier is only fair. Could I put him higher? Sure. But I do think that it is only fair to put Jokic this year into good. So this is the tier list that we have got. I don't know how I feel about it. I really don't know how I feel about it. I know a lot of you guys are going to be annoyed at some things. I might, hit the wrong thing there. I might, put Kobe up. Just because people are going to get really, really angry at me not putting Kobe. Because I want to beat out of this and I don't have any more space for good tier. So I'm going to move Embiid up here. Because I don't think Embiid deserves to be with these 3 MVPs. But I think this MVP is extremely underrated. I think Giannis' 2019 might deserve it as well. Yeah, let's move Giannis' 2019 up as well. I'm happy enough with this list. Let me know what you guys agree with. Let me know what you guys disagree with. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.